helped me in the move. And when he returned to Colorado to our home following helping me move, he arrived to find all the neighbors, victims and non-victims, swarming the home and the property. I'm not sure if they thought that he was gone and we were gone and now it was a free-for-all or what, but he reported that he pulled up and everybody was there, in the house, on the driveway, the little kids in the neighborhood riding their trikes around our sidewalks and around our pool deck, just swarming the property. And he didn't know what to do, so he called 911 and then kind of tried to go by them and go down to the building behind our home, his shop. And as he was driving down, one neighbor and a victim came running up saying, "The feds are coming, the feds are coming." His living situation was dire without the kids and I there. He didn't have any money, he didn't have a car, he didn't have any friends, he didn't have any way to live, and he wanted to get the clock ticking on his time. So he asked repeatedly to be taken into custody, but again, the government has to build a case, so the process can be slower than thing one wanted or the victims wanted. He was basically squatting in our home trying to survive, and he finally one day called me in Utah to say he was going to tell the authorities if they didn't take him into custody soon that he was going to start eating every meal at Blackstone Country Club, of which we were still members. That was the country club we'd belonged to. And then asked, how's that going to look if a criminal is living the country club life? So probably as a result of that, but also the case was finally built. He appeared before a judge and was charged for his crimes on August 18th, 2009. So more than a month after I'd left and moved to Utah, I wrote in my journal, Thing 1's court appointment to charge him was today at 2:15 p.m. At 5 p.m., I saw on the news here in Utah that Thing 1 had been taken into custody, that the courtroom had erupted into applause as he was led away in handcuffs. The news then reported that Merriman was divorced and his family had moved away. I had specifically told Thing 1 I didn't want to be mentioned in any way with his court appearance, and my request was apparently not honored. The humiliation seemed to never end. I read somewhere online about that time that Thing 1 had been voted Schmuck of the Week. How's that for lovely? A crazy life, crazy world, but I remember thinking at the time, that just might make a great title for a memoir. I was married to the Schmuck of the Week, or I was married to the Mormon Madoff. He was taken into custody after he was charged, but while awaiting his sentencing. And he was placed in the Denver County Jail, I believe, which jail is meant, I've learned, for short stays. It's not the same as prison, which is meant for longer periods of incarceration. So in the jail Thing 1 was in, they served the same meal, breakfast, lunch, dinner, every day, because normally people are only there maybe for one meal. So that meal that he got to enjoy every day, probably for close to a year, was, he reported, a bologna sandwich, an orange, a carton of milk, and a cookie, maybe some Jell-O. And he ate that 3 meals a day for close to a year until he was finally sentenced. I thought it was a little ironic because he hated sandwiches. He had always refused to eat a sandwich. And that was what he got to eat after being taken into custody for his crimes. So anyone who's upset at him, anyone who thinks that he didn't get what he deserved, there are lots of little things that happened to him that I think you could take some comfort in. So while he was in that jail, he met a lot of very dangerous lawbreakers. Some were well known. He would never say who they were, but he had some interesting experiences with them that I can talk about in another part in my series. Interestingly, the judge who presided over the time he was charged, tracked me down in Utah at work and called me one day. It was out of the blue. We were divorced. I knew he was in custody. I thought I was done with everything. And then I got a phone call that said, Andrea Merriman, do you know who I am and why I'm calling? And he told me his name. And I said, no, I don't. He said, I'm the judge who was at your ex-husband's appearance where he was charged with his crimes. And he said, do you know why I'm calling? And I said, probably to tell me I must be the dumbest woman alive. And he said, no, actually the opposite. I am calling to tell you that of all my years on the bench, and I'll be retiring soon, that Thing One is the absolute best at what he has done. I have never seen anyone so compartmentalized, someone with so little emotion. And he then said, do you know that you don't have to have any contact with him in the future? And I didn't know that. I didn't understand what that meant. And he said, you can ban him from having any contact with you or your children. All it would take is for you to make a call to the court and make that request, and we will ensure that he stays away from Utah and from you and your children. Now, eventually, he was found guilty and sentenced. I was already living in Utah. I was working. We divorced. I didn't really feel like his sentencing was my business. I wasn't curious. I didn't plan to be there. But a friend of mine knew the date, and she made sure she went to the sentencing. Interestingly, I wouldn't say she was ever a huge fan of Thing One, but she kept saying, I'm going to the sentencing for you to let you know how it goes and what the result is. On the eve of Thing One's sentencing, I wrote this in my journal. Thing One will be sentenced tomorrow. It has been almost 18 months to the day since he shattered our lives and our world. It's as if we've been living in limbo, not knowing the timetable of the future, and now tomorrow it will be here. Now, there are some things that he had done prior to this appearance of being charged in his sentencing. One thing that he'd done was he requested that I write a letter on his behalf that would be read at his sentencing. And I didn't want to be involved, and my attorney spoke with his attorney, and I was advised against writing one. And I'll tell you in the next part of my series why he wanted me to write a letter for him, what had happened that necessitated the need for a letter, and how the sentencing all turned out.